The Corpse Queen. In 14th century Portugal, Prince Peter made a dangerous mistake. He fell in love with the wrong woman. Her name was Inés da Castro. She wasn't a princess. She was a lady-in-waiting, a noblewoman who served Peter's wife. When his wife died, he refused to marry anyone else. He moved Inés into the palace, had children with her, and declared that she was the only woman he would ever love. But Peter's father, King Afonso, was furious. The king saw Inés not as a lover but as a threat. He worried that her family was gaining too much power and that her children might try to steal the throne. He warned Peter to leave her and threatened to disown him. But Peter refused to budge, so the king decided to solve the problem the hard way. He waited until Peter went away on a hunting trip, leaving Inés unprotected. The king sent 3 assassins to her home. They found her alone in the room, despite her begging for mercy on her knees. The assassins executed her right there, ending the problem once and for all. When Peter returned and found the love of his life slaughtered, something inside him snapped. He didn't just grieve, he went to war against his own father. The civil war raged for months until the old king finally died. The moment Peter became the new king of Portugal, he didn't call for peace, he called for revenge. He hunted down the men who had killed Inés. 2 of them were captured. Peter ordered a brutal execution meant to mirror his pain, so the killers' hearts were torn from their bodies. But Peter wasn't finished. Revenge wasn't enough. He wanted justice for Inés. He declared that he and Inés had been secretly married before she died, making her the lawful queen of Portugal. To prove it, according to the legend, he ordered her body to be dug up from the grave. It had been years since she died. Her body was decomposing. But Peter had her dressed in royal purple robes and placed on the throne beside him, then put a crown on her head. Then he forced the entire royal court, the same nobles who had looked down on her while she was alive, to line up, bow down, and kiss the decaying hand of the corpse queen. It was a scene of absolute horror, but also of absolute devotion. Peter ruled for 10 more years, and when he finally died, he asked to be buried feet to feet with Inés so that when Judgment Day came, the first thing he would see would be her face. Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Mark Antony was the greatest soldier Rome had ever produced. Cleopatra was the brilliant, incredibly wealthy queen of Egypt. They met for political reasons. He needed her money for his wars, and she needed his armies for protection. But that alliance quickly turned into an obsession. For over a decade, they lived in Alexandria as the ultimate power couple. They had children, they threw lavish feasts, and they ruled the Eastern Mediterranean like their own private kingdom. They believed they were untouchable, but there is a rule in history: the higher you climb, the harder you fall. While they were living in luxury, their enemies in Rome were plotting. Antony's rival, a man named Octavian, was watching all of this. And he wasn't happy. He saw Antony giving away Roman land to a foreign queen, acting more like a king than a general. Octavian used this jealousy to turn the Roman Senate against them. He convinced everyone that Antony was a traitor, and just like that, a massive war had begun. Antony and Cleopatra lost the war badly. They retreated to Alexandria, but the Roman legions followed them right to their doorstep. As the enemy breached the city gates, the couple made a desperate choice to split up. Cleopatra locked herself inside her massive, fortified tomb for protection, while Antony stayed in the palace to command the final stand. This separation was the fatal mistake. Alone in the palace, cut off from his queen, a message reached Antony: Cleopatra is dead. It was a lie, a rumor born from the chaos, but because he couldn't see her, he believed it. In that moment, Antony's world collapsed. With Cleopatra gone, he believed everything was over. His power, his purpose, and the one person who still bound him to the world, he saw no reason left to live. In a final act of despair, he drew his sword and drove it into his stomach. But it didn't work instantly. He was left on the floor in terrible pain. While he was lying there, a second messenger ran in shouting, "Wait, she's alive. She's hiding in her tomb." Antony realized his mistake too late. His servants had to carry him to the tomb. Since the doors were locked tight against the Romans, Cleopatra and her maids had to throw ropes out of a high window and physically pull the dying Antony up the wall. He finally made it inside. When he finally reached her, the scene wasn't one of anger or regret. Antony did not accuse her. He did not curse fate. He simply asked her to remember him and died there in her presence. Now Cleopatra was truly the last one standing. She knew Octavian was coming. She knew he planned to drag her through the streets of Rome in chains as a trophy. She refused to give him that satisfaction. She arranged for a peasant to bring her a basket of figs. Hidden beneath the fruit was a venomous asp. She dressed in her finest royal robes, lay down on her golden couch, and placed her hand into the basket. When the Romans finally broke down the doors, they didn't find a prisoner to humiliate. They found a queen who had outsmarted them one last time, choosing to leave the world exactly as she had ruled it, on her own terms. The Human Cannonball. In the early 1600s, Russia was in chaos. The old royal line had died out. Suddenly, a young man appeared claiming to be Dmitri, the long-lost son of the Tsar who had supposedly died as a child. In reality, he was likely a runaway monk, a total imposter. But he had charm, he had luck, and most importantly, he had a powerful ally, a Polish noblewoman named Marina. Marina didn't care if he was real or not. She wanted to be a queen. They married, marched an army into Moscow, and incredibly, the Russian people believed them. The runaway monk became the Tsar, and Marina became the Tsaritsa. For a few months, they lived the dream. They threw massive, expensive parties in the Kremlin. They ignored Russian traditions, ate with forks, which Russians thought was demonic, and filled the court with Polish foreigners. They acted like they owned the place. But the Russian people weren't stupid. They started to notice that their Russian Tsar didn't act Russian at all. The whispers started, "He's a fraud, he's a heretic." The dream turned into a nightmare during their wedding celebrations. The people of Moscow had seen enough. A massive, angry mob stormed the Kremlin gates, shouting for the impostor's head. Dmitri tried to escape the palace by jumping out of a high window, but he broke his leg in the fall. The mob caught him in the courtyard and killed him on the spot. But a simple death wasn't enough for the angry crowd. They hated him so much, they wanted to make sure he could never come back. They took his battered body to the execution ground and burned it to ash. Then, in one of history's most petty and creative acts of revenge, they mixed his ashes with gunpowder. They loaded the mixture into a giant cannon. They wheeled the cannon to the city gates, pointed it west, back towards Poland where he had come from, and fired the cannon. He is the only monarch in history to be posthumously turned into a projectile. As for Marina, she survived only to spend the rest of her life chasing the same empty dream, proving that some people never learn. The Midnight Mutilation. In 12th century Paris, Peter Abelard was the most celebrated philosopher in Europe. He was brilliant, famous, and extremely arrogant. He felt he could do no wrong. So when a powerful church official named Fulbert hired him to tutor his brilliant niece Heloise, Abelard didn't just see a student, he saw a prize. The lessons quickly turned into a passionate secret affair. As Abelard later wrote, there were more kisses than words. They fell madly in love, Heloise got pregnant, and they secretly married to protect Abelard's reputation. But in medieval Paris, secrets didn't last long. When her uncle Fulbert found out, he felt completely betrayed. He believed Abelard had abused his trust to ruin his niece's life. He demanded they go public with the marriage, but Abelard refused, sending Heloise away to a convent to hide her. The uncle was furious. He thought Abelard was trying to get rid of her. He decided formal church punishment wasn't enough. He wanted a revenge that was permanent. One night, the uncle paid a group of thugs to break into Abelard's bedroom while he was sleeping. They bribed his servant to unlock the door. They didn't kill him. Instead, they pinned him down and took his manhood. It was a punishment designed to do two things: destroy his manhood and end his career, since high-ranking churchmen had to be whole. Humiliated and broken, Abelard fled to a monastery to become a monk. He forced Heloise to take the veil and become a nun, separating them for the rest of their lives, and they never saw each other again. See you in the next one. Until then, keep watching our other videos.